Welcome to Mindset, Money, Success podcast. My name's Loraine Marshall and I'm your host. Now today I'm wanting to talk about abrupt termination of a relationship and post-separation abuse. I have actually been in a situation now for 3.5 years, and the relationship I had was actually terminated very abruptly. I had no idea that the relationship was going to end because in 2020 my former partner has plans to move furniture into our house in Spain and to start his business here in Spain, and talking about plans for the future. So when he left Spain in July of 2020, I had no idea that in August, when he arrived back, that he would just terminate our relationship. Then 2 days later, write a letter of a financial proposal of what he was prepared to do. And in these last 3.5 years, I have faced one litigation and a second litigation, and actually have 3 overlapping litigations because according to his solicitor, there's a third litigation that will go to the civil court so he can recover costs of the first litigation and moral damages. So 3 overlapping litigations. And the first one was the precarious eviction. In October of 2020, I received an email. On the 5th of October, I received an email. And in that email, he'd copied in his solicitor. And that was the date that he had said he was now going to go to court and I would be evicted and I would leave with nothing. Now, this was after, obviously, he had gone back on everything that he'd promised, basically. And his lawyer was not prepared to help because I wrote to his lawyer, and the lawyer's response wasn't even what I would say reasonable, because I had made a mistake in writing to this lawyer to think that he would help to resolve things and be able to mediate or, come to some sort of arrangement. And that wasn't the case, because I had been advised by a different lawyer to file a gender violence complaint. Now, in my state of mind, which was grief and shock and disbelief of how things had worked through, I didn't even want to file a complaint of gender violence. And so I did ask that lawyer, could he not write to our lawyer, the lawyer that we'd had? Could he not write? And he said, no. Did you not hear what he said? You cannot negotiate with him. Well, that was true. I couldn't negotiate with him, my former partner, because he had made it very clear that I could not negotiate with him. But the lawyer might have done, but he said no, file a gender violence complaint. So I made a mistake thinking that our lawyer, the lawyer we'd had together, would help in the situation. He didn't help. Basically, he had been given information from my former partner and had said I had rejected his offer. This was not true. This was misleading, because I had not rejected the offer. which was 50% of the value of the home. I had not done that. What I had done was tried to negotiate things at the end of the relationship, and obviously being told that you can't negotiate with me, right, meant that I was silenced. I couldn't speak. He wouldn't listen, and it didn't end in a good way. So now, after I regained some of my confidence and my self-esteem, as it took about 6 months, to be honest, to go through all of the grieving process, to actually work things through in my mind and feel better about myself. So that was a long process of 6 months. And then I got an invitation from someone to actually contribute a chapter in a collaborative book. And so in April of 21, I actually wrote a chapter for a book, which was published in the December of 2021. At the same time, I wrote the outline for my first self-published book, and I started writing throughout 2021, and I published in May. So I think about just over 1 year later, I published the story of the post-separation abuse after the relationship had ended. And the 2022 date for the publishing was just 4 weeks before the court hearing, which was for the precarious eviction. Although he had said in 2020 he wanted to go to court to evict me, there wasn't any evictions because of the COVID restrictions, the COVID lockdown, and no one was going to court to evict anyone. There was a stay on all evictions. So it took a while to get to the court. I found that the public appointed lawyer didn't listen to anything that I said or anything that I wrote in emails, and ignored everything. Basically, there was no evidence submitted to the court, and I was denied a voice at the court. I didn't have any opportunity to speak. My understanding was that it was a verbal hearing, and I had been to that courthouse 5 days before because my lawyer wasn't listening to me. And I spoke to the court official at that in the courthouse, who then listened to what I said and told me that the lawyer is not helping you. And she said I should sack that lawyer and make an official complaint. Now, at the time, it was 5 days to the court hearing, and I still assumed that I would have a voice, that I would be able to say something because it's a verbal hearing. I was wrong. I had no idea what information had gone into that court. My evidence was denied, and then in 2023 I asked for the files from that solicitor. I'd already made a complaint then, and I did receive all of the files for that court case. And one of the emails that was submitted to the court was at the end of May, 10 days before the court hearing. And then when I've translated the email, which was to say whether or not there would be a translator appointed, I discovered that was one of the reasons why I wasn't allowed a voice in the court. The lawyer had said neither the plaintiff or the defendant understands Spanish, and her client, which is me, had no form of income, and so the court would have to appoint a translator. So for those reasons, she was not going to interrogate the plaintiff, which meant there was no questions asked. And that is how I didn't have any opportunity to speak or tell my side of the story of what happened. And so within, I think, a month or 2 months later, after I'd published my book, my former partner was making plans to take a further litigation. And by October of 2022, I had Guardia Civil at the gate of the house, the gate of the property, to hand over another summons to go to court to collect the official court document. And I had no idea what it was for. So to collect that document, I then discover that I have 7 criminal allegations filed against me by the former partner. And those allegations included defamation, slander, harassment, misappropriation, theft, and revealing secrets. Then the prosecutor decided more or less immediately that slander was not going to be heard in the first hearing. And the first hearing was supposed to be November of 2022. And I was told I would be appointed a public solicitor. And from my past experience of having 2 other public solicitors, I thought, hold on a minute, I've got 7 criminal allegations against me. The solicitor, the law firm, has then requested the maximum penalties, which were prison, and it had added up to 17 years. So, to be honest, my faith in the free public justice was at 0. And I decided that I would have to look to appoint a lawyer. And I think I must have called around 10 different solicitors and companies in order to explain the situation and to get help. And looking at the local area where I am here, which I'm in the countryside in Murcia, I couldn't find any lawyer that would take the case after I'd explained it. I guess that there's not many calls to defend someone on all of these charges, which has a requested of 17 years of prison plus defamation, because defamation and revealing secrets and theft and all of this. Very complicated case. So I eventually found a lawyer in Madrid who only deals in criminal cases, and the outcome of the first hearing was that 5 of the allegations were dismissed. So now there are 2 allegations moving forward, and one is the defamation and the other is damages. And the defamation is because of my self-published book, the post-separation abuse, betrayal and abandonment, what type of man? My story, written and published with a pen name, Loraine, and that book contains the story of the relationship and what happened post-separation up to the point of mid-2021. And now I am ready to start to write the second book, because I just find that everything that's happened needs to be explained, and how the justice system fails women when they report domestic violence and domestic abuse. Because I spoke to a lot of lawyers when this situation first happened, and lots of them had said it's very difficult to prove emotional and psychological abuse. But if they don't listen and don't understand it, well, of course it's difficult to prove. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. And I think women have failed because lawyers are not prepared to actually consider the different hidden forms of abuse. And women who are in trauma don't want to disclose all of the abuse that they've suffered. Not at first. I now understand how that works. Police have been called out to incidents where there's been physical assaults, and the woman won't press charges. Lots of women do this. It's the fear reaction, the guilt that they think they're to blame, and the trauma that they've been through. And so it's difficult for the women to start with to actually report something. They don't want to. Just as I didn't want to file that complaint, and I didn't get support to file that complaint. So this is one of the gaps that I found, the gaps in the justice system, the gaps in the laws that happens when there is forms of abuse. So what I want to now talk about is the abrupt termination of a relationship and the post-separation abuse that can happen. So this is an article that I've written, and I just want to go over this in this podcast. So abrupt termination and post-separation abuse. Emotional and psychological abuse is a pattern of behaviour. Introduction. This article covers the abrupt termination of a relationship, looking at cause and effect between abuser and victim. And most relationships will end where both parties can move ahead and process the past quickly. However, if we consider closure after a relationship ends compared to no closure, then we can see how an abrupt termination will harm one or both of the parties. In a relationship that already has hidden forms of emotional and psychological abuse, or domination and coercive control can easily morph into post-separation abuse after a relationship ends. There is a list of signs to look out for, as well as considerations on how to stay safe. You can read some of my other articles on my website, which is lifechangeplans.com, and I write under my pen name, Loraine Keeling. Now, what is closure in a relationship? Closure refers to the feeling of peace, understanding and acceptance that a relationship has ended when both parties are left in a position of understanding and can emotionally feel safe, financially secure, and have some certainty for the future. Closure helps people to move forward without too much trauma. No closure. Perhaps the relationship ended abruptly, then we can be left in a place of uncertainty, trying to work out what the hell just happened. When there's no closure, it means that there are loose ends left after the relationship ends because all issues haven't been resolved. For example, when one partner decides to break off a relationship, it's natural that the other person wants to know why. Normally, emotionally mature individuals can explain the reasons why they feel that the relationship is not working for them. The person can talk through things and let other person down gently. However, there are some circumstances where, for example, a person is cheating on a spouse or partner at the end of a relationship, and they just blurt out a statement that causes huge emotional hurt and damage. If a person just blurts out, "I've got something to tell you," and then announces, "I'm in love with another woman," well, that's quite shocking. The negative effects of abrupt termination. Cause and effect. Firstly, grieving is a negative emotion, but it's natural, and the effects wreak havoc on your emotional and physical well-being. Sleeplessness, sadness, worry, doubt, heartache are part of the negative effects, which can spiral downward into negative emotions. And I have an article on my blog, on my website, which goes over the emotional energy spiral. In my situation, everything was moving quickly. For example, I experienced some disturbing and confusing behaviour from my partner while he was still living in our Spanish home. There was increased alcohol use and increased consumption of legal cannabis throughout the day. Apart from how he ended our relationship, he wrote out the financial proposal that he sent to me in an email. The letter was an offer of 50% of the value of our home. There was hardly any discussion after the night when we'd sat until 4 a.m. and I talked about my past and how I might write a book, and everything was moving quickly. He wanted to sell the property and I instructed the agents. Within days, the first viewing happened. Then a few days later, while I was sitting alone in the bedroom where I was staying out of the way, the former partner came into the room and he shouted angrily about a phone call from the agent who had told him some feedback from her clients. Something I had said was termed negative and off-putting. So now he was in my face shouting, "Do not fuck about with me. I'm in control. You do as I say, or I can throw you out onto the streets." So now I added fear to the emotions I was feeling. His reaction was way over the top, I immediately sent a text message to the agent. I was angry. Why would the truth be considered as something negative? Feeling intimidated and threatened. I now knew that my financial security was being threatened. I had seen the angry monster in him before, in FaceTime calls and telephone calls, but this was just too close for comfort. I sent another couple of messages and the agent eventually apologised. Only I was left walking on eggshells, not knowing when he would blow up again. Another friend took my map location and she said if anything happened, then I should call or text her and she would get the guardia or the police to the property. Post-separation abuse. Post-separation abuse is a continuation of abuse that has happened within the relationship. The issue with post-separation abuse is that even after the relationship has ended and the couple are separated, the abuse doesn't end. It just morphs into a different form of power and control, and emotional, financial, or legal abuse, or all three. A perpetrator will continue to intentionally cause pain and suffering for a victim. Tactics include manipulating, undermining, shaming their victim. His behaviour towards me was very confusing. I had no idea what he was experiencing in his mind. I could only see this unhealthy cycle of behaviour and how he was now moving on to another relationship very quickly after the abrupt termination of our relationship. Emotional and psychological abuse is never one incident. It is a pattern of behaviour. I refer to this type of non-physical abuse as hidden forms of abuse because quite often the victim doesn't understand that they are being exposed to abusive behaviours. Some of the signs to look out for: outbursts of anger or rage, dismissal of your thoughts and feelings, lack of respect for your personal boundaries, coercive, controlling behaviour, invasion of privacy and jealousy. Long-term abuse in a relationship can have a devastating impact on victims. When a victim realises that they have been duped, manipulated, betrayed, lied to, future faked and fed false hopes and dreams, they can descend into the most negative of emotions. Most individuals that I have spoken with will say that they blamed themselves, they felt worthless, in despair and with no will to live. They lose trust in others. How to keep safe and protect yourself. The first thing is to remind yourself that you are not to blame. Plan for the worst. Like I had a friend who had my map location. You should confide in a trusted person or a family member and have a way to alert them if you feel threatened or in danger. Go no contact with your ex-partner. Avoid being alone if possible. Get legal advice as soon as you can and know your rights. Do not be pressured by legal professionals. Make sure they understand your situation. And if going through a separation or divorce, do not jump straight into legal conflict. Be firm and request alternative dispute resolution as a first approach. Understand how post-separation can play out. Now, I have a video which I can link in the description below, which you can listen to, which goes through some of the things I've experienced. And I titled the video, Not Just Another Conflict, Divorce or Separation. So I hope that you can listen to that video as well. There will be no win-win solution in a conflicted divorce or separation. The only winners are in litigations and family court will be the lawyers who demand high fees and expenses. For more information on coercive control, I link to an article which is from Dr. Emma Katz. I'll link that article in the description box as well. And a quote is, "Frequently, in current practice, cases of post-separation fueled by an abuser's obsession with harming their ex-partner are mislabeled as high conflict cases." And this is where things go wrong. Thank you for listening to my podcast today, and I'll see you on another episode of Mindset, Money, Success. Bye for now.